Hey there, we're Mike and Heather, and we've spent the last year and a half traveling in our 2013 Ford Transit Connect that we've converted into a micro camper named Appa.
We've gone all over the country, to 49 of the 50 states in our van to be specific. In today's video, we're going to talk about some of the things that we learned about van life, some advice if you're thinking about starting this type of lifestyle, and overall everything that we wish we knew before starting van life. Let's get started. Before you even really think about van life, something that you might want to do is try car camping, try vehicle camping, and whatever type of vehicle that you have, because if you can do that and find it enjoyable, you're gonna find van life enjoyable. It's not always as glamorous as it seems, and if you're able to get by and still find enjoyment as you're camping out of whatever vehicle that you have, chances are that van life is right for you. And if you're like, no, this is not what I expected at all, then maybe stick to larger RVs or hotel travel.
Definitely recommend something like that before you make a huge investment for something that just isn't right for you.
And you might even find that you don't need to do the large investment of van life, of buying a van and building it out. There are a lot of people who do this in their everyday vehicles. I watch a couple channels where they're doing it out of their Prius or their back of their trucks or their SUVs. So you can really make this type of van life lifestyle work outside of a van. So you might even find yourself enjoying that a little bit more, although van life is pretty awesome. Our advice if you're looking to build out a van is, one, do your research when purchasing a van. Make sure that a style of van life is what you're wanting. If you're okay with a micro camper van without a shower and a bathroom, or if you feel like you need a little bit larger space, it's going to be incredibly disheartening if you start building it out and realize that you can't fit everything in there that you want to. Two, don't be intimidated by the build at all. If we can do it, trust us, you can.
We had no construction or carpentry experience before we got into this. I had barely used power tools, so I was really nervous that we wouldn't be able to build a van out on our own, and that whatever the end result was would just be passable and probably not the greatest. But at the end of the process, I was blown away at how well things turned out because of all of the resources that are available online. Plan for extra space in your budget as you're getting materials. During the course of the build, you may make a cut that ruins a piece of wood that you needed. You have to go buy another one. There may be pieces that you discover that you need that you hadn't thought of before. So having a little bit of extra space in the budget is definitely a must, because you can't plan and account for everything in your build, and mistakes aren't something you plan for either, but they definitely happen.
Buy the must-have items first and then build out your van. And what I mean by that is buy your solar power batteries, buy your refrigerator, buy the key components of your van, because if you build out your bench, for example, like we did, and then go to put your solar batteries in the bench and find out that the bench is too small, you're gonna have to do a lot more finagling, where if you just got the solar batteries to begin with, built the bench around it, it would have been a lot smoother of a process. So have all the measurements ready to go, even if you're not going to buy the items physically, so that way you can make sure that when you are building, everything fits the right way and you don't have to do a lot of makeshift happenings after the fact. After you do finish your build, don't plan a very large trip. Plan a small one for a week or two, maybe a month. Go live in your build for a little bit and then come home and fix everything that you end up hating about it, because there's going to be so many changes that you find that you want to do in your van once you start living in it.
After completing our initial build, we took a 2-week road trip from the top of Maine all the way down to the Keys on Route 1, and over that time we were able to kind of identify the things that worked in the van, things that didn't work, things that we felt we needed that we didn't have, and also some of the things that we had that just weren't practical to carry with us full time. So we made a lot of adjustments after that initial trip, where we added an extension to the bed to give us more space. We completely redesigned our cabinet and removed the shelf that we had in here. We added a shower that we could mount on top of the van on our roof rack instead of one that took up space on the inside of the van. There were quite a few changes that I think we would have been disappointed that we didn't make if we went off and were on the other side of the country before we realized this just wasn't going to work.
You're never quite done finishing your van, so it's completely okay if you get on the road and you want to make some adjustments. We just suggest taking a little joyride before you commit to a really long trip in a van that you've never lived out of before.
Once you're on the road, you may think that all of your building days are behind you, but that's not always the case. Like anything, constant use will cause things to weaken over time, and you may run into some of your build items breaking. Don't panic, that's pretty normal. We had to fix our bed and kind of rig it up to work when we were in Alaska because the extension broke.
Our advice for you on that note would be definitely carry some extra tools and budget into your overall trip budget a little nest egg for repairs.
For vehicle repairs, as well as supplies in case you need to make any minor fixes in the van. The big stuff may have to wait till home, but we definitely would recommend bringing along a small toolkit in case you have to patch something up until you can fix it more permanently.
But our best advice is to try and stay as flexible and positive as possible and go in with it knowing that some things may break, so that way when it does happen, it doesn't ruin your day or make you hate van life altogether. Don't let it ruin your day and keep on rolling. Unless you have to fix some tires, but we've fixed our fair share of flat tires too. It's all part of it. Another thing that we wish we knew when we embarked on our van life journey is how the whole situation of spending the night in different areas work. We're from the East Coast, so boondocking, which is a fancy way of saying dispersed camping or free camping on public land, is very rare out here. So the entire idea of staying on free camping spots is completely novel, in addition to not really understanding that you can just park up in a parking lot and that be totally legal as well. So I wish we knew a little bit more about the process of how to find those campsites and what to expect when we got there.
So that was something that we learned over time and got more and more comfortable with as we went, but I wish that we knew it wasn't as big a deal as it seemed like it was in our heads when we first started. I remember on our very first trip, we stayed overnight in a Walmart and were freaking out about whether or not we were going to be okay there, whether we were even allowed there, even though there weren't any signs to say otherwise. It just seemed like a bigger deal than it actually was. But as long as you take steps to make sure that you're in a safe area, and we also have a video about that, talking about how we found safe overnight parking spaces, as long as you're doing things like that and prioritizing safety, it really isn't as difficult to find spots, and you're much more safe than you would imagine sleeping in some of these locations. And at the end of the day, so many people in van life do this. We parked in parking lots that looked like campsites at times because of how many different vans were staying there overnight. So there is a whole culture around it, and while you're probably not going to be able to immediately dive in with no concerns, we're here to tell you it's not as scary as it seems at the start.
And it's completely normal to have some apprehensiveness or some anxiety about the whole sleeping in parking lots or stealth camping or even driving out into the middle of the wilderness to park for the night. All of those are normal feelings, but you will get more and more comfortable with it and you're gonna laugh back at it in a couple of weeks. And that kind of segues into the apps that we suggest downloading, or the apps that we wish we knew before we set out. We've just made a video of all of our favorite apps, but if we had to narrow it down to only a couple that would be our best advice to download, the first one would be iOverlander. That's how you're gonna find the majority of the services that you're gonna need as a van lifer, including those free camping spots, places to fill up water, where you can fill up your propane tanks, garages, so if you ever do need break down and need to do that. The great thing about that app is that it's all peer reviewed, so you can read up on the different businesses and locations before you even get there. Sometimes there's even pictures of the different campsites, so you can really become comfortable with the type of places that you're gonna stay before you even get there, and know that there's a bunch of services around you as well if you need them.
Along those same lines, one of the services that we found out about as we were into van life a little bit that I truly wish that we knew about on our very first road trip was a Planet Fitness membership to be able to take showers wherever we were in the country. We made it work on our first road trip, but there were times where we were very sweaty and wanted nothing more than to get cleaned off, but we didn't have a good way to shower because we were always kind of in cities on the East Coast. There wasn't a place we could break out our shower and get cleaned up. So one of the great things that we learned through watching YouTube videos or reading different forums is that a Planet Fitness membership is pretty affordable and it gives you access to good, clean showers in a lot of places across the country. Something that we didn't really think about too much before we started, but absolutely wish that we knew from the jump, would be that as a service to be able to stay clean while you're on the road if you don't have a built-in shower in your vehicle.
On the same note of cleanliness and hygiene, something that we definitely wish we knew before starting van life is just how dirty that you do get. Even if you do have a Planet Fitness membership and a shower attached to your van, you're still going to get gross and dirty, and that's just the facts of van life. So baby wipes and wet wipes are going to be your best friend, and just know that there may be a few days that you don't shower in between your shower stops. That's completely normal, but definitely a huge adjustment for us, going from showering every single day in our old lives or at our apartment to going into van life. And I think the longest that we went was what, a week? 8 days?
Yeah, our very first road trip was
Rough.
a little under 2 weeks. I think we got 3 showers over the course of it. So 2 of those were on the beach in like public beach showers that we did in our swimsuits. So it definitely was a big step up, but yeah, there's still times where you're not close to a Planet Fitness and you just got done doing a really great hike, but now you're sweaty and gross and you kind of have to deal with that until you get to a place that you can shower. So getting to a point where you're comfortable, or at least understanding that there are going to be times where you feel a little bit more grimy than you'd like to be. And
that van life isn't all glamorous. And
yeah,
you're not going to have all the amenities as much as you try to prepare to have them. It just isn't going to happen. So you definitely have to be okay with knowing that.
All that to say, there are some really incredible moments in van life, and then there are some where van life is not as glamorous as it looks online.
For every one beautiful, this is the reason why we're doing it, campsite and experience for van life, there's 2 nights that we're sleeping in a Walmart or a Cracker Barrel. So just putting that into perspective and have that as an understanding, so that way you're not disappointed when every single day isn't fantastic. And although we've had plenty of days that make this entire experience worth it, there's been a few that were like, what the heck are we doing? Just set your expectations and you're gonna have a fantastic time.
When we started our journey, we weren't really sure what to expect in terms of the actual movement of being in a van. And as we were traveling, we learned that there are some days where it's going to be a lot of driving. There are some spots that you aren't going to spend a lot of time in. It's important to set your expectations on what type of van life travel you want to do, and maybe it's just going to a place and posting up for 2 weeks while you just enjoy being parked on BLM land. For some people, it may be traveling and visiting as many places as possible, moving a little bit more quickly. Heather and I moved pretty quickly and didn't really stay in a spot more than one night, and that worked great for us at some times, but there are other times where we felt burnt out and wished that we had a little bit more time in some of the places that we enjoyed. So going into it, have an idea of what kind of travel you want to do, and at least have that as a starting point so you're able to see if you like that or if you need to change your plans accordingly as you're going.
My advice would be, don't be afraid to move slower. Especially when we first started out, we're like, we have to hit as many things as possible. This is so exciting, like we're finally doing it. But I think if we would have taken things slower, especially in those first couple of states, we would have been able to do more. And our overall vibe of van life was definitely more road trip than living out of it. We got to do this more as like a vacation and something fun, and we recognize that some people do this as a lifestyle because they don't have any other means. So we don't want to compare our experience to people who have a very different van life experience. But for us, ours was more about road tripping because we absolutely loved road trips, and that's kind of the style that we went with. All that to say is that there's no right way to do van life, and you can really customize it to be whatever that you want. Don't compare yourself to others and just go out there and have fun. The other thing that we wish we knew before starting van life is, specifically with working remotely, it is going to be a little bit difficult to get into the rhythm of it and finding that work-life balance on the road. It's basically like working at home, except when you log off, instead of sitting on your couch, you get to go do something for the evening or get to be in a really new and exciting place for the weekend. But it is still work, and it's something that you still have to manage and figure out where you're going to be the night before that has strong internet service to be able to get those hours in the following morning.
Also, thinking about time zones is another thing that you have to keep in mind.
Yes.
All that to say is it's not necessarily the most seamless transition, and it does take a little bit of work. When we finished with work, we would want to go do an activity and then continue moving to the next spot. And at the end of the day, if we were trying to do some personal projects for YouTube or things like that, it was a little bit difficult because it's the end of a long day and you kind of want to relax.
And that's where moving more slowly comes in to be beneficial once more. Plan a couple buffer days in between your things that you want to do in case you are tired, so that way you can still enjoy it the following day if you're just completely drained after working and traveling and doing all of that. And the last bit of advice that we're going to leave you with is, don't let other people's negative opinions about van life sway you from jumping into this lifestyle.
When we got into van life, we really were excited about the prospect, and we sort of thought everyone would feel the same way we did. So when we left our career jobs and started working remotely, when we invested in buying a van and converting it, we thought that this was the best idea that anyone had ever had. Other people just didn't get it, and that's okay. Not everyone is going to want to convert a van and start living in it and traveling the country. That's not for everyone. And don't let yourself get discouraged if other people don't have the same idea of happiness, because we have had some of our best moments and some of the most fun times in our entire lives during the course of our van life journey.
While van life feels very normal for us, or maybe you, because you're also consuming this type of content, consuming travel content and van life content, we dove right into it. YouTube is our TV. That's what we watch for entertainment. We don't have cable. So van life felt really normal to us. But when we started telling other people, it wasn't always the same reaction. And a big part of that is that we thought it was so normal, but other people do look at it as an alternative lifestyle, and that's okay. Like Mike said, some people just aren't gonna get it. We could definitely understand why people would think that way. But in the end, this is what makes us happy, and if this is what you think will make you happy, then go for it.
So these are all things that we've learned as we've gone through our van life journey. Hopefully by sharing this with you, you'll be able to avoid some of the mistakes we made. At the end of the day though, you're gonna learn things as you go. Some of the things just won't make sense until you're actually doing it, and that's okay.
If you have any questions or want us to elaborate a little bit further on any of the things that we did discuss in this video, feel free to let us know. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you in the next one.
I'm living my best life. I wake up with the sunrise. It does not look a thing like I thought that it would, but I've been getting my steps in, and I sleep with my best friend. It's the best that it has been in a long time. I'm living my best